A quiet black woman wheels a mop bucket past a hospital VIP room, never knowing the man inside will one day fight for her dignity. The wheels of the mop bucket squeaked against the linoleum floor as Amara Daniels guided it down the silent corridor of the VIP wing. It was the kind of quiet that didn't feel peaceful, just expensive. The overhead fluorescent lights buzzed with a low hum, and every few feet the polished floors reflected Amara's soft footsteps like a mirror. On her hospital ID badge, tucked behind the plastic sleeve, a crayon drawing peeked through her daughter's masterpiece from daycare. It was a smiling sun and a woman with curly hair and long lashes labeled in shaky handwriting, Mommy. She tucked the badge deeper into her chest pocket, not wanting the nurses to tease her again for wearing sentimental armor. They didn't understand. Most of them didn't need to bring parts of their children to work just to get through the night. In the waiting room, the TV murmured with a news report no one was watching. Real estate mogul Grant Whitaker remains in a coma. 6 months now with no public appearances from his family. Amara barely glanced at the screen. She'd heard the name before. He was the man in room 414, the one they called the Coma Man. Linda, the night supervisor, intercepted her near the break room. Hey, sweetheart, you okay to stay an extra hour tonight? Lila called out again. VIP suite needs someone thorough. Amara nodded before her brain caught up. Yes, ma'am. I've got it. Linda smiled, grateful but tired. You always say yes. You need to start saying no more. I'll practice, Amara said, and meant it as a joke, though her voice barely rose above a whisper. The supply closet smelled like bleach and lemon oil. She restocked her gloves, 2 pairs tonight, and tucked an extra packet of wipes in her apron. She hesitated, then slid her daughter's folded drawing into her pocket again. The paper was soft at the edges now from weeks of folding and unfolding. Room 414 was colder than the others. Not just in temperature, though the thermostat read 68 degrees. The air felt heavier, like it carried things no one said aloud. The nameplate on the door read only VIP occupant. No flowers sat on the side table, no balloons, no cards. Just a single recliner by the window that hadn't been touched in weeks. The man lay motionless, his pale skin a contrast to the dark gray sheets tucked crisply beneath him. He looked younger than the tabloids suggested, maybe late 30s, clean-shaven, with faint lines near his temples that hinted he used to laugh often. His chest rose and fell rhythmically thanks to the machine beside him. Amara rolled her cart in slowly and began her routine. Trash bin emptied, fresh linens on standby. She pulled on her gloves, snapping them with the same precision she'd learned cleaning up after her daughter's toddler years. Then something made her pause. The man's hair, perfectly parted on the side, was flattened in an odd way, like no one had touched it in days. She hesitated only a second before pulling a clean cloth from the warm water bucket and wringing it gently. With the same care she gave her daughter after naps, she wiped his forehead, dabbing around the temples. There we go, she murmured. No one likes to feel sticky. Her own voice startled her. She wasn't used to hearing it outside of yes, ma'am, or pardon me. But something about the room asked for softness. A few minutes later, the door creaked open behind her. You practicing for sainthood or something, came a voice. Kendra, the night nurse, leaned against the frame with a smirk. Amara looked over her shoulder. Just doing my rounds, Kendra snorted. Ain't nobody in there to impress? That man doesn't even blink. You really wasting baby wipes on a billionaire in a coma? Amara gave a small smile but didn't answer. Kendra pushed off the door frame. Anyway, don't say I didn't warn you when someone writes you up for exceeding scope. Come get your break when you're done saving the world. When the door clicked shut, Amara exhaled slowly and reached for the bedpan. Her gloves were fresh, her movements quiet. It wasn't glamorous, but it was clean work, honest work. As she moved around the bed, her fingers brushed the side rail, and she caught sight of his lips slightly parted, as if caught mid-breath. She leaned close, adjusting the tube at his collarbone. Your hair's messy, sir, she whispered. Gotta keep you fresh. She didn't expect an answer, and none came. But somewhere behind her, the news anchor's voice returned. Whitaker Holdings is under pressure after today's layoffs of over 3,000 employees, many citing poor leadership in the absence of CEO Grant Whitaker. She reached over and clicked the TV off. The room seemed to exhale with her. Outside room 414, the corridor returned to its hushed rhythm. Amara wheeled her bucket down to the utility closet, but stopped halfway. A folded paper peeked out of her apron, the crayon drawing. She pulled it out, smoothed the edges, and stared at the smiling sun her daughter had drawn. "Keep shining, Mommy," the daycare teacher had written in a corner. It wasn't just a picture, it was permission to keep going. Back in the break room, a vending machine buzzed softly. The chair by the window sagged a little, but Amara sat anyway, resting her feet. From across the room, Linda gave her a thumbs up before disappearing into a charting room. Amara sipped warm water from a paper cup and gazed out the dark window. City lights flickered, and just beyond the parking lot, a church billboard glowed, "Faith works even when we sleep." By the time she returned to room 414, the floor had quieted even more. The swing shift nurses had gone home, and the night staff worked in slower waves. Amara slipped inside the room like a shadow. This time she moved slower, not out of hesitation, but respect. She rechecked the linen corners, refolded the towel at the edge of the sink, and then on impulse reached into her pocket. She unfolded the drawing and gently tucked it under the edge of the plastic tray near the man's bed. Just a corner, enough to add color to the grayscale room. Her daughter's name was in the bottom corner, Imani. A cough from the hallway made her jump, but no one entered. With a sigh, Amara reached into her cart for the final wipe down. She started with the IV pole, moved to the windowsill, and then the monitors. As she cleaned the heart rate display, a soft mechanical beep echoed. She paused. Nothing unusual, just the steady rhythm. But something made her glance back at the man's face. His eyelid twitched. Amara froze. She stared harder, leaning in slightly. Maybe it was her imagination. Muscles did strange things in comas. Nurses had explained it before. She resumed wiping slower now, every sound amplified. Her breath, the drip, the faint hum of the monitor. Outside the intercom buzzed code gray in Wing B. "Security respond." She sighed. Just another domestic dispute in the ER, probably. The kind of chaos she never had to clean up directly, but always after. Broken chairs, tipped trash cans, smeared tears on cold floors. Back in the room, she adjusted the man's blanket one last time. Her hand brushed his wrist. It was warmer than she remembered. Amara pulled back slightly. Maybe the heat kicked in, she whispered half to herself. Maybe. She gathered her tools and reached for the light switch, then stopped. Something about leaving felt wrong, like she was abandoning someone. She turned halfway and looked at the corner where her daughter's drawing now peeked out. Then at the man's hand, still and veined with pale blue. "I'm going home to my baby now," she said softly. "But I'll see you next shift." With that, she turned off the light. The room dimmed to a pale glow from the machines. She didn't see his finger twitch again, but it did. Twice. Down the hall, Kendra leaned against the break room counter, scrolling through her phone. "You sure took your time," she muttered without looking up. "Had to double-check a few supplies," Amara said. She wasn't good at lying, but she didn't feel like explaining the truth either. Linda emerged from the main hallway, waving her clipboard like a flag. "Y'all head out. We're covered for the rest of the night." Amara clocked out with a quiet beep. She changed from her scrubs into her hoodie and jeans, pulling her coat tight against the autumn chill. In the parking lot, her breath puffed clouds into the night. Her phone vibrated with a text. "Hope your shift went okay. Imani asked for you before bed. Drew another son." Amara smiled. At home, she'd find a new drawing waiting on the fridge. Maybe with brighter colors, maybe with a heart this time, maybe not. But either way, it would remind her someone still believed in her light. And without knowing why, she suddenly thought of room 414, of the man with no visitors, no cards, no heartbeat strong enough to break silence, but maybe strong enough to twitch beneath a sheet. Maybe she hadn't just cleaned tonight. Maybe she'd stirred something quiet, something beginning. She entered the room one last time before shift change, pushing the cart gently to avoid rattling the bottles of disinfectant. Her movements were habitual by now. Gloves on head, bowed eyes always scanning the floor first. There was something reverent in the way she cleaned, as if this was a sacred space, not just a room with a silent man and a nameplate that never got updated. Amara had worked at the hospital long enough to know which patients got visits and which ones didn't. The man in 207B had crossed the 6-month mark weeks ago. No flowers, no balloons, not even wilted ones. His bed sheets were always crisp thanks to Linda's standards, but everything else about the room felt abandoned, like a forgotten hotel suite where time had stopped ticking. She swapped the linens carefully, lifting his arm just enough to tuck the sheet under, pausing when his skin, though warm, gave off a strange chill. His beard had grown uneven, and she wondered if anyone came by to trim it. Gently she took a moist cloth and wiped the corners of his mouth where a faint dryness had formed. "You look better now," she murmured, more to herself than to him. The hum of the nearby TV filled the silence. A cable news anchor reporting that Whitaker Holdings was undergoing restructuring, a corporate euphemism she didn't fully understand but didn't like the sound of. Layoffs, the scrolling ticker read. Thousands. It was hard to match the man lying in front of her to the man in the news. One looked like power paused. The other, this one, just looked tired. She moved to change the bedpan. It wasn't part of her cleaning duties, but Linda had asked her to help, since the nurse was delayed with an emergency. The hospital was short-staffed this week, and Amara rarely said no. Not when Linda had been the only one to give her night shifts after others refused to accommodate a single mother. Amara did it gently, humming as she worked, not a tune with lyrics, just a rhythm from childhood, something her grandmother used to hum while shelling peas in the evenings. It calmed her even now. As she leaned in, she adjusted the IV line slightly, her gloved fingers moving with a nurse's care, even though she wasn't one. She made sure everything was placed just right. She always did. From the hallway, someone laughed loud and careless. A couple of orderlies joked about the new coffee machine breaking down again. But inside room 207B, everything remained still. Amara took one last look at the man, brushed a curl of hair off his forehead, and whispered, "Your hair's messy, sir. Gotta keep you fresh." She didn't expect a reply. She never did. The room lights were dimmed now. The setting sun cast a soft amber glow against the blinds. Amara walked over to the light switch and flicked it off, letting the soft beep of the heart monitor be the only noise left. And in that moment, just as she turned, just as her silhouette began to retreat through the doorway, his index finger twitched beneath the sheet. She didn't see it. She never looked back. The man who hasn't opened his eyes in 10 months somehow remembers the scent of lavender. Amara didn't believe in ghosts, but she had started to wonder if feelings could linger in the air. The moment she stepped into Mr. Whitaker's room that night, something shifted. It wasn't dramatic, not a light flickering or a sudden chill, but something subtle, like the room had been waiting for her. The air felt oddly warmer, softer. She paused by the door, one hand on the mop handle, the other tucked into her hoodie pocket, fidgeting with the corner of a folded paper, a drawing from her daughter Nia. She pulled it out and tucked it discreetly into the corner of her ID badge, just enough so that the small rainbow and crooked stick figure smiled up at her from her chest. It made the long shifts easier somehow. Outside, the chill of late November crept through the hospital windows. Frost had settled on the outer panes, and Charlotte's brief autumn had given way to a cold snap that left even the staff lounge drafty. Christmas decorations had begun to trickle into the halls, paper snowflakes, plastic wreaths, tinsel taped above elevators. They all looked tired before the season even began. Inside room 214B, the television was off as always. The man in the bed looked the same as yesterday and the day before that. Coma didn't come with drama. There were no beeping monitors to dramatize his condition, just the steady low hum of machines and the occasional whisper of warm air from the vent. Amara stepped inside with the same soft quietness that had become her habit. She set the mop aside, wiped her gloves down, and looked at the man who hadn't spoken a word in 10 months. Nathan Whitaker, billionaire real estate developer. The man whose name was once on billboards and downtown towers. Now he was just the Coma guy. She took a deep breath and pulled a small bottle from her pocket lavender lotion she bought with a coupon at the pharmacy down the street. It wasn't hospital standard, but nobody had said anything. She never put it on his face or anything that would compromise care. Just a little on his hands. Cold skin made her sad. As she gently massaged a dime-sized drop into his fingers, she murmured, "Cold tonight, huh? My little girl lost her tooth today. She put it in a napkin. Said the tooth fairy better show up, or she's writing a letter." Nathan's fingers didn't move, but something about his brow looked less tight. Amara watched his face for a moment, wondering if she was imagining things. Maybe it was just the shadows playing tricks. She moved slowly, rhythmically, smoothing the lotion over his knuckles, tracing the curve of his palm with her thumb. It was routine now, like bedtime with Nia. "Your hands feel better. Not as dry as last week. You wouldn't believe how many people just walk past you like you're furniture." She didn't say it with resentment. It was more of an observation, soft and sad. In another life, maybe she would have been one of those people too. Maybe not cruel, just rushing, too busy to notice. The door creaked open behind her. Amara looked up quickly. Nurse Linda stood there holding a clipboard and raising a brow. "You talking to your man again?" Amara flushed slightly. "He's not my man, Linda." Linda stepped in her sneakers, squeaking faintly. "Strangest thing," she said, flipping through a few sheets. "His heart rate spikes whenever you're here. Dr. Patel asked if anyone's been messing with his meds. I told him only the janitor talks to him like he's still got feelings." Amara hesitated, then smiled. "Well, maybe his soul likes a good voice." Linda chuckled, but there was something thoughtful in her eyes. "He hasn't twitched for anyone else." "I don't do anything special," Amara said, shrugging. "I just don't treat him like he's already gone." Linda nodded and left with a sigh, leaving behind the scent of hospital soap and faint skepticism. Later that night, Amara walked home with her coat zipped high and her thoughts heavy. She didn't own a car, so the 20-minute walk to her apartment felt longer in the cold. The sidewalk lights buzzed overhead. She passed shuttered shops and the warm glow of a Waffle House where students laughed over syrupy waffles. At home, the apartment was dim. One of the kitchen bulbs had blown out. She set her keys down beside a worn stack of unopened mail and made her way to the bedroom, where Nia slept with a book on her chest, one sock half off. Amara smiled, peeled the book gently from her fingers, and pulled the blanket higher. The fridge hummed. A late notice was taped to it next to a magnet that read, "Kindness is free." She made box pasta, sprinkled it with butter and salt, and sat in silence while she ate. Her phone buzzed a reminder from the food bank about turkey pickup for Thanksgiving. She clicked "Remind me later." When she returned to the hospital the next night, the air in room 241B held that same lavender echo. It was strange comforting. She leaned close to Nathan's face and said, "I brought more lotion." He didn't react, but in some invisible quiet place, his heart remembered. The next shift came with heavier air. Outside, the wind hissed down empty streets and rattled the glass doors of the hospital lobby. Charlotte wasn't built for cold like this. It slipped under jackets, clung to bones, made even the staff grumble louder than usual. Amara arrived early. She always did. She liked the quiet moments before the real rush began, before the endless beeping monitors wheeled beds and muttered complaints of visitors too tired to be kind. She clocked in, tied her hair up higher, and grabbed her cart. Her gloves were still stiff from the night before, but she flexed her fingers until the material gave in. Nurse Linda spotted her by the supply closet. "You on the east wing tonight?" Amara shook her head. "No. Overflow in west, then 214B. Linda gave her a half smile. "You're the only one who ever asks for that room." "I don't ask," Amara said, tightening the belt on her janitor uniform. "I just don't mind." Linda didn't argue. Instead, she handed Amara a small bottle of hospital-grade hand cream. "Use this on him tonight. That lavender stuff smells nice, but his skin's been reacting to the air." Amara pocketed it, nodding. "Thank you." The night passed in quiet loops. Mop, wipe, sanitize, repeat. In one hallway, Mrs. Rothstein was arguing with a nurse over the temperature of her water. If I wanted lukewarm, I'd drink from the garden hose, she barked. Amara moved silently behind them, pushing her cart, eyes down until the old woman's gaze caught her. And you, next time, don't leave streaks on my mirror. I'm not trying to look like a ghost. Amara didn't reply, just kept moving, heart tightening. But as she turned the corner, she heard the woman mutter to a nurse, "That girl changes diapers better than she raises kids." The words hit like a slap. She didn't stop walking, but her breath caught. By the time she reached Nathan Whitaker's room, her eyes were stinging, not from tears, but the effort of not letting them fall. She stepped inside and closed the door behind her. It was dim, the overhead lights muted. She flicked on the soft lamp by the bed. Nathan looked the same, still and distant. His mouth slightly parted, his skin pale against the white sheets. But to Amara, he'd become more than stillness. He had presence somehow. She sat down beside the bed without a word and pulled the hospital lotion from her pocket. As she gently massaged it into his hands, she didn't speak at first. The silence was companionable, not cold. Finally, she said, "People say things when they think you can't hear them." Her voice was barely above a whisper. "Sometimes I think that's when they're most honest." She paused, then smiled faintly. "But maybe they're just being cowards." She reached into her other pocket and pulled out a worn piece of paper, a poem from a book Nia brought home from school. Amara had copied it down to help her daughter with reading, but she liked it too much to throw away. She read softly, slow enough that her voice didn't echo. "You may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies." She stopped, feeling the lump in her throat. "I like Maya Angelou," she told him. "She makes me feel seen." Nathan didn't move, but somewhere in the machine's quiet clicks, Amara imagined his pulse tick just a bit faster. She leaned closer. "Nia's school wants her to dress up like a storybook character next week. She wants to be the moon. I told her, baby, the moon doesn't wear tutus. And she said, tonight it does." A soft laugh escaped her lips and she shook her head. In that small room, her voice softened the air. The fluorescent lighting seemed less cruel. Even the monitor's beeps took on a slower rhythm, as though syncing with her presence. Hours later, during a quick break in the staff lounge, Amara pulled out her phone. No new messages. One missed call from the electric company and a bank notification account below minimum balance. She sighed and tucked the phone away. When she returned to 214B, something caught her eye near the back cabinet, a corner of paper folded and yellowed. She knelt, reached for it, and unfolded the photo slowly. It was Nathan, younger, maybe late 20s. His smile was wide, unguarded. Arms around two construction workers. Behind him, a half-built apartment tower and the Carolina sun blazing in the background. He looked alive, free. She glanced at the man now so still beneath the machine wires and sterile blankets, and quietly she tucked the photo into the drawer of his nightstand. "Don't worry," she whispered. "I won't let you be forgotten." She pulled the blanket higher around his chest. Then, without thinking, she reached into her badge and took out Nia's crumpled drawing, the rainbow, the stick figure with curls, the yellow sun. She taped it gently to the wall above his bed. "You could use a little color in here." And for a moment the room felt warmer, softer, almost human again. The heater in Amara's apartment rattled like a broken washing machine. It hadn't worked properly in 2 winters, but the landlord promised someone's coming next week. It was always next week. Tonight, though, she didn't have the energy to argue. After getting off her shift, she found Nia already tucked into the worn couch under 2 blankets. One of her socks was missing, and her curls were tousled like a storm had passed through. Her babysitter, an older neighbor named Ms. Carter, had left a note on the fridge in looping cursive. "Nia did great. Read 3 books. Please call about light bill." They left another notice. Amara read it, sighed, and opened the fridge. A nearly empty milk jug, leftover rice, 1 apple. Rent notice now, joined by a second unpaid phone bill. She boiled some pasta, watching steam fog the window. Her coat still smelled faintly of antiseptic and lemon cleaner. When the pasta was done, she stirred in butter, divided it into 2 mismatched bowls, and sat on the floor beside Nia. Mommy Nia murmured half asleep. Did he smile tonight? Amara blinked. Who, baby? The man who doesn't talk. The one you tell stories to. A smile tugged at the edge of Amara's lips. No, he didn't smile. But I think he heard me. Nia nodded like that made perfect sense. Maybe he's scared. Amara tilted her head. Why scared? 'Cause being quiet too long makes people forget you're real. The little girl curled back under the blanket, eyes fluttering closed. That line stayed with Amara for the rest of the weekend. By Monday night, the halls of the hospital had shifted. Thanksgiving decorations came down, and strings of fake holly and snowflakes had taken their place. The night shifts were even quieter now, less staff, more muttering about budget cuts. Dr. Patel passed her in the corridor without his usual smile, clipboard clutched tight. Rough night? Amara asked gently. He glanced around, lowered his voice. Just finished reviewing EEG scans on 214B. There's something odd. Activity spikes. Not much, but they seem to align with certain voices. Amara raised an eyebrow. Voices. Dr. Patel hesitated. I mean yours, to be honest. Nurse Linda said she's noticed it too. We're not drawing conclusions. Just noting patterns. Amara didn't know what to say to that, so she didn't say anything. That night, after finishing her usual rounds, she stepped into room 214B with a small bouquet of dollar store lavender tucked into her cleaning cart. She replaced the old limp flowers in the vase. No one else had brought any. Nathan lay still, as always, his face unchanged, but the air around him felt expectant, as though holding its breath. She sat on the edge of the chair, pulled out the poetry sheet again, and read softly. This time she chose a different stanza. Bringing the gifts that my ancestors gave, I am the dream and the hope of the slave. I rise. Her voice wavered. She set the paper down. I wanted to be a teacher, once she admitted. But then Nia happened and dreams don't feed babies. She reached out and adjusted his blanket. Still, I guess you're my student now. Outside, wind scraped tree branches across the windows. Inside, the only sound was the rhythmic beeping of machines. Amara turned off the overhead lamp and reached for the lotion. As she massaged it into his hands, she paused. There was moisture near his eyes. At first, she thought it was just condensation or some odd side effect. But the shine pooled exactly in the corner of his eye, tiny unmistakable tears. She leaned in. Are you in pain? No response. No flinch. Just silence. Her breath caught. She dabbed the moisture away with the edge of a tissue. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it was everything. She stayed longer than usual that night. When she finally rose to leave, she whispered near his ear, I'll be back. Don't let go. She turned off the lamp. That night in the depths of the coma, Nathan dreamed. He dreamed of light, warm and yellow like early spring. A voice hummed softly, wrapping around him, like comfort he'd forgotten. A woman stood by a window. Her skin glowed with the sun behind her curls lit like a halo. She was singing head-tilted voice, no louder than breath. He didn't know her name, but he whispered it anyway. Amara. She was just doing her job until a visitor filmed her changing his diaper and turned it into a joke. The hospital smelled of reheated coffee and industrial sanitizer, more antiseptic than comforting. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, and the vending machine in the break room blinked an error message for the third day in a row. Amara tied her apron a little tighter around her waist, wiped her hands on her uniform, and slipped a fresh pair of gloves on. She'd already mopped 2 wings and helped a nurse with a spill in pediatrics. Her eyes burned from lack of sleep, but the rhythm of her steps kept her from dwelling on the cold stairs or the whispers that now seemed to follow her into every hallway. Linda caught up with her by the water cooler, holding a clipboard close to her chest. Can you cover room 4 again? The floaters are late, and Mrs. Rothstein's demanding someone with soft hands, she said with a tired smirk. Amara gave a gentle nod. I'm good for it. Linda hesitated before placing a hand on her shoulder. I heard what people are saying. You need to know some of us see you, Amara. I know, she whispered. It's okay. I've got bills, not feelings. They shared a short, bitter laugh before Amara turned toward the VIP wing. Inside room 9, Nathan Whitaker lay still, his body framed by the soft green glow of machines. The room was quiet but not silent. Monitors beeped slowly, an IV drip clicked, and the faint sound of holiday music spilled from the hallway speakers. Someone had set a tiny plastic Christmas tree on the windowsill. Its lights blinked unevenly. Amara wheeled in her supply cart and set it against the wall, away from the visitor chair Bryce had dragged to the middle of the room earlier. She'd seen him once before, sharp jawline, expensive cologne, and the kind of blazer that said he didn't work, just performed the idea of work. Bryce worked at Nathan's company, according to Linda. He said he was here for a quick snap for the quarterly newsletter. She'd ignored him then, just as she planned to now. Nathan's sheets were slightly tangled. Amara adjusted them gently, working around the IV lines and heart monitor leads with the familiarity of someone who never rushed, even when the world tried to rush past her. She hummed softly the same tune she sang to her daughter when her asthma flared up at night. She didn't notice Bryce standing in the doorway again, phone in hand. The moment her gloved hand reached under the blanket to adjust Nathan's bedpan, Bryce tilted his phone, capturing the frame at an angle that made her posture seem odd. She paused instinctively, turning toward the movement, but he had already tucked the phone back into his coat and flashed a smirk. "You treat him like a baby," he said, shaking his head. "Cute." Amara blinked, unsure what to say. Her cheeks flushed. "He's a person, even now." Bryce gave a theatrical nod. "Right. So touching." And then he left. Later that night, in some dim-lit bar or overpriced apartment, Bryce would post it to his story with the caption, "Single mom tries to impress a corpse." Within an hour, it would make the rounds in a group chat titled Office Laughs. By morning, a comment thread would grow under it, filled with crying, laughing emojis and casual cruelty. "She wants that inheritance. She diaper trained him already. Janitor turned sugar mama." 2 days later, the echo of that video would reach Amara like a cold slap to the face. But for now, she leaned over Nathan's face, adjusted the corner of his pillow, and tucked the blanket under his arms. "You looked cold again," she murmured. "And I know you hate the draft from that vent. Don't worry, I closed it." She glanced at the window. Snow was starting to stick to the glass in fragile, wet flecks. As she wheeled out her cart, she passed Bryce again, this time in the lobby, laughing at something on his phone. She didn't ask. She didn't want to know. That evening, her daughter's backpack was missing. Again. Amara found it behind the couch, the zipper half broken. Inside, a half-eaten banana and a note from her teacher. "Please come see me after your next shift." Amara sighed, closed her eyes for a second, and whispered to the ceiling, "Okay, one crisis at a time." She kissed her daughter's forehead, boiled a small pot of rice, and poured canned peas into the water. It was enough. Tomorrow she'd have to explain why people on the internet laughed at the way she wiped down a stranger's legs. But tonight she'd sing Wheels on the Bus softly and pretend they were just another family in another apartment where things didn't leak and no one knew her name. Amara didn't sleep that night. Not really. She lay in bed, one arm wrapped protectively around her daughter, her mind flickering between Bryce's smirk and Linda's gentle eyes. By morning, her prepaid phone buzzed 6 times in a row. She didn't answer until the 7th. "Ms. Daniels." The voice on the other end was clipped, cautious. "This is Principal James from Levitt Elementary. Could we meet after school today? It's regarding a video that's been circulating." Her stomach dropped. By the time she clocked into work, her back already ached from tension. The janitor closet smelled like bleach and tired dreams. She stood for a moment in front of the mirror, hung crooked above the sink. Her reflection looked like it hadn't had a moment's peace in years. Linda caught her before she started her round. "Amara. Baby girl, you?" "Okay?" Amara forced a nod. Linda hesitated, biting her lip. "You might want to prepare yourself. That intern, Bryce. Someone said he posted something. About you. About room 9. "I figured," Amara said, softly adjusting her gloves. "Folks been staring harder than usual." Linda reached into her cardigan pocket and handed Amara a folded printout. "I didn't want you to see it first online." It was a screen cap. Grainy, cropped, but unmistakable. Amara bent slightly over the bed. Nathan's legs exposed just enough to suggest more than reality. The caption in bold, "Single mom tries to impress a corpse," Below it, a string of emojis and usernames. Not her doing foreplay on a billionaire potato. She aiming for that Coma ring. This why y'all can't trust broke girls. Amara stared at the page. Then she folded it in half, then again, until it was too thick to bend further. She shoved it into the trash. I just changed him. Like I've done for 6 months, she said, her voice flat. I know, Linda whispered. Some people only see dirt, no matter how clean your hands are. That afternoon at Levitt Elementary, Amara sat across from Ms. James in a tiny office filled with cheerful posters that suddenly felt too bright. There's a viral video, Ms. James said gently. Some of our 5th graders stumbled on it through their older siblings. Your daughter, she heard some boys laughing, said they called you a poop maid. Amara clenched her hands. She said that. She said you sang lullabies to dead people and asked if you were going to lose your job. I assured her you weren't in trouble. Amara swallowed the lump in her throat. I don't know what to say to her. Just tell her the truth, the principal said softly. That being kind doesn't always make you popular, but it makes you good. Back at the hospital, whispers followed Amara like a shadow she couldn't outrun. Nurse Tex glanced up and fell silent. A group of residents pretended to discuss charts when she passed. Even the vending machines seemed to blink at her with judgment. In the cafeteria, she heard it. She diaper trained him already. Her hands trembled on the styrofoam cup of tea, but she didn't look up, didn't give them the satisfaction. She finished her shift in silence, each step through the corridor heavy as concrete. Even the soft scuff of her mop sounded accusatory. Later in the small meeting room near Human Resources, the chairs were too soft, too plush. The kind meant to lull someone into calm before bad news. 3 people sat across from her, Linda on one end, looking uncomfortable. A hospital administrator named Mr. Reynolds in the middle reading a prepared statement, and a woman from HR who kept her eyes on her notepad. We received a complaint concerning patient boundaries and staff conduct. Mr. Reynolds began. Amara didn't flinch. I didn't do anything inappropriate. There's a video circulating online, publicly the HR woman added, and while we understand it was taken without consent, perception becomes policy. So kindness has a PR clause now, Amara asked, tone even. No one is accusing you of misconduct, Mr. Reynolds said quickly, but given the optics and the hospital's reputation, we're recommending a temporary suspension, the HR woman finished. Pending review. Amara blinked. Her gloves were still tucked in her pocket. She'd planned to use them tonight. For how long, she asked. Until further notice. Her voice dropped into something colder. Was there a policy I broke? A guideline that says I can't treat a man like he's still human? No one answered, so she rose. On her way out, she passed room 9 one last time. Nathan lay still, his face turned slightly toward the window. Snow had started again. Soft drifting flakes blurred the city skyline. Amara stared at him through the glass for a long moment. You're not the one who shamed me, she whispered. The world did that on its own. Then she walked away, head high, hands bare. The days after her suspension moved with the stiffness of winter. At home, Amara pored over coupons and childcare applications. She checked her prepaid phone every hour, waiting for a call from HR that never came. Her daughter asked, Mommy, are you on break? And Amara smiled and said, Just resting my feet, baby. But each night when the dishes were done and the heat rattled weakly through the vents, she'd stare at the empty hours she used to fill cleaning the lives of others. One afternoon, Linda knocked on her door. The older woman stood on the porch, shoulders hunched beneath a heavy shawl. I brought pasta and news, she said. Inside over microwave tea, Linda finally sighed. They're probably going to let it blow over. Quietly. But that boy, the intern, his video's still up. Even now. Thousands of views. Amara stared out the window. My daughter's teacher says the kids quote it. Linda pressed her hand. It wasn't right. But what you did? That man was more cared for than any of us in that place. Because of you. Amara smiled, tired. What good is mercy if it becomes a meme? Later that evening, alone in bed, she closed her eyes. Sleep came slow, but somewhere between exhaustion and dreaming, her mind drifted to the VIP wing. She imagined wiping his brow, humming softly, telling him that stories had power, even if no one listened. She pictured him blinking once. Just once. Miles across town and room 9 monitors blinked in soft patterns. The silence was different tonight. Tighter. A nurse new unfamiliar came in muttering about temperature checks. She barely glanced at Nathan Whitaker, noting his vitals without concern. Then she paused. One of the lines had shifted. Slightly. She leaned in. His eyes, they were twitching. Back at Amar's apartment, her daughter lay curled up with her drawing pad. "Mama," she mumbled, half asleep. "Will you go back to help the sleepy man?" Amara kissed her forehead. "Only if they let me." In his coma, Nathan's world had been darkness, a velvet silence that felt like water. For months he floated unaware, untouched. But lately, something had changed. He began to feel things. The softness of hands, the sting of ridicule, the echo of humming. And tonight, for the first time, the dark felt thinner, like gauze pulled from his eyes. In the dream, a woman stood before him, skin glowing like honey under sunlight, a mop handle in one hand, and kindness blooming from her eyes like a sunrise. He tried to speak. Nothing. He tried again. The word clawed from the bottom of his chest, pushing through his throat, his lungs, his ribs. Her. The nurse screamed. 2 more rushed in alarms, blaring. One shouted, "He spoke." The charge nurse hit the button, then ran to him. "Mr. Whitaker? Whitaker? Can you hear me?" Nathan blinked. Once. Then again. His lips trembled. "Where is she?" After nearly a year in silence, the first word from Nathan Whitaker's lips wasn't mom or doctor, it was Amara. The name had landed softly in the room, but to those present it thundered. Dr. Patel froze, his pen clattering to the floor. The attending nurse turned, eyes wide. "What did he say?" Nathan blinked slowly, his lips parted as though surprised he could form sound at all. A deep breath, raspy raw, escaped his chest. "Amara," he repeated this time, barely above a whisper. "Is that a family member?" Dr. Patel asked, flipping through his clipboard. "We don't have an Amara listed in his contact forms." Nathan's brow furrowed. "No, not family." Outside December, rain slid down the windows in steady lines. The VIP wing was unusually quiet, the hum of machines and muted carols from the intercom creating a dreamlike haze. Holiday garlands had been taped along the hallway rails, their reds and greens garish under hospital fluorescence. Nathan's gaze darted across the room. "What day is it?" "December 12th, the nurse said gently. "You've been unconscious since February. You've just woken up from a 10-month coma." Nathan lay still. He didn't flinch. He didn't cry. He only said, "I knew it was long. I could feel the seasons change. Through her." Dr. Patel looked up. "Through who?" The woman, Nathan said, voice steadier now. She sang. The room went quiet. She smelled like lavender. Her hands were warm, gentle. She called me sir, in the sweetest way. He searched their faces, desperate. She talked about her daughter, about bedtime stories. The nurse hesitated. "You were aware during the coma." I couldn't speak, couldn't move, but I knew her voice, like a rope pulling me back up. Dr. Patel exchanged a look with the nurse. "There's documented cases of sensory memory returning early in comatose patients. Emotional triggers, voices. But what you're describing, I need to find her." Nathan interrupted, attempting to rise. "She's real." "Whoa, whoa. Easy there." Dr. Patel placed a firm hand on his shoulder. "You need to take this slow, Nathan. You're still healing." "I'm fine," Nathan insisted, though his limbs trembled. "I remember only pieces of my life before. I don't know who visited or what deals I made, but I remember her. That woman saved me, and no one seems to know who she is." The nurse bit her lip. "There are logs, shift reports. Maybe she was a nurse." "No, not a nurse." Nathan closed his eyes, calling forth the echo. Her shoes squeaked. She pushed a mop, and her voice, he broke off. For a moment he looked like a man at sea, grasping for a shoreline only he could see. "She sang to me." Dr. Patel stepped back and nodded slowly. "All right, we'll check the staff rotations. But Nathan, you need to rest. We're not going to chase ghosts today." "She's not a ghost?" Nathan opened his eyes again, steady now. "She's why I woke up." As the medical staff left the room, whispering to each other with tight voices, Nathan leaned back into the pillow, He traced the syllables of her name with his tongue again and again. Amara. The way it curled in his mouth felt sacred, not like a fantasy, like truth. Down the hallway, Linda shuffled past carrying a clipboard and a file in one hand. She didn't enter his room, but she paused when she heard someone mention the woman who sang. Her fingers tightened around the clipboard. No one knew who Amara Daniels was anymore. Not officially. Not since she'd been suspended and scrubbed quietly from the records. But Linda did, and she wasn't ready to let Nathan forget her either. Rain tapped softly against the hospital windows as Linda stood outside Nathan's door, heart rattling in her chest. She should have kept walking. She had Patience Round's inventory forms, but something about hearing that name again, Amara, it didn't just stir memory, it stirred guilt. In the break room, she carefully shut the door behind her. Pulling out her phone, she scrolled through her photos until she found the one she hadn't deleted, couldn't delete. A crayon turkey bright pink with tiny fingers tracing around its edges. "Get well, Mr. Sleepyhead," it read in uneven preschool letters. Drawn by a little girl who barely knew what a coma was, carried by a mother who'd folded her own pain into a smile every night. Linda exhaled long and slow. Downstairs, Nathan was asking questions about footage, about records, but most of it was gone, cleaned out, archived, or accidentally deleted after the incident with that smug intern Bryce. HR had wanted it buried. And after the video blew up, there was incentive for everyone to forget Amara Daniels existed at all. Except Nathan hadn't. And neither had Linda. Later that afternoon, Linda stopped by Miss Geraldine's room. The old woman sat upright in bed, sipping weak coffee and watching a game show rerun. "Miss Geraldine," Linda said gently, "do you remember Thanksgiving night?" The elderly patient chuckled, showing her lone gold tooth. "Course I do. Ain't nobody brought cranberry sauce but that sweet girl from janitorial. Brought me a little cup with whipped cream on top. Said her daughter helped make it." Linda smiled. "Do you remember her name?" She said it real quick, like she didn't want no credit, but her badge had a picture of a baby girl in it. She kept glancing at it like it was keeping her going. Linda nodded. "Would you say she ever went into room 511? The man in the coma." Miss Geraldine's eyes twinkled. "Honey, she lived in that room, whisperin', cleanin', hummin' that lullaby like he was her own kin. I told her once, he probably hears you, and she just smiled like it didn't matter if he did or not." Linda clutched the clipboard tighter. That night after shift, she stopped by Amara's apartment. The building was older with peeling paint and a stairwell that smelled of fried onions and mildew. She knocked softly. No answer. Knocked again. Finally, the door creaked open, and a tired voice whispered, "Ms. Linda." Amara stood there in sweatpants, her daughter balanced on one hip. The little girl was drowsy curls, askew thumb in mouth. "Just finished bedtime," Amara said. "Sorry we're out of snacks or tea, but I'm not here for that," Linda said. Her eyes softened. "I'm here to tell you something. You might want to sit." A minute later, they were at the tiny kitchen table. The rent notice was still taped on the fridge. One burner had a cracked coil. Amara had always made do with little. "He said your name," Linda began. "Nathan Whitaker." First thing out of his mouth when he woke up. Amara blinked. He woke up 2 days ago. They've kept it quiet for now, but the first thing he asked for was you. Amara didn't move. "Are they still mad about the video?" "They tried to erase you," Linda said, voice low, "but they didn't succeed. He's remembering, and he wants to find you." "I don't understand," Amara whispered. "I was just doing my job." Linda reached into her bag and pulled out the drawing, the crayon turkey. "He remembers this," she said. "It's not about gratitude, Amara. It's something deeper. The way you were with him, it mattered." Amara swallowed hard, the weight of months pressing down on her chest. "But I'm not part of his world," she said softly. "I'm not even part of that hospital anymore." Linda stood and placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "That never mattered to you before. Why should it now?" She didn't stay long. When the door closed behind her, Amara stared at the drawing Linda had left on the table. Her daughter sleep murmured in the next room. Outside, the rain hadn't stopped. Across town, Nathan stared at a blank wall in his room, his hands fidgeting. He'd asked for security footage. They told him it was gone. He'd asked for the woman's name. They said no one by that name was on staff. But then Linda had slipped into the room while the nurses weren't looking. "If you really want to know who was with you Thanksgiving night," she whispered, "ask Miss Geraldine. She remembers more than we do." And he had. Now he knew. Her name wasn't a dream. The warmth wasn't imagined. She was real. He turned toward the window. Rain blurred the world outside. "She has a daughter," he murmured, as if the memory had been waiting for permission to surface. "That's why she kept the picture on her badge. A girl, with big eyes. Said she was reading chapter books already." He smiled faintly, voice growing clearer. "I'm not resting until I find her." The next morning, Nathan insisted on being wheeled into the common area. His legs were still unsteady, but the need in his chest was louder than the soreness in his muscles. Dr. Patel watched him with a mix of admiration and disbelief. "Most patients who wake from a 10-month coma don't walk in 2 days," the doctor said. Nathan offered a half smile. "I guess I had a reason." He didn't elaborate. Around him, the world felt too bright, too fast. Christmas music piped faintly through overhead speakers. Tinsel lined the nurse station, and a gaudy inflatable reindeer blinked red in the corner. But none of it touched the quiet place inside Nathan's mind, where her voice still echoed low, warm, and slightly off-key. He'd asked everyone, nurses' aides, even the janitorial supervisor. No one gave a straight answer. Some said she was let go. Others claimed there was no record. One even told him, "Maybe you dreamt her." But he remembered too clearly for it to be just a dream. That night he asked for Linda again, but she was off shift. So he turned to Geraldine. The elderly woman wheeled herself beside his bed, humming as she sipped from a red plastic cup. "Glad to see you up and blinkin' sugar," she said with a wink. "Took your sweet time." Nathan chuckled weakly. "Do you remember the woman who used to come here around Thanksgiving?" Geraldine said without hesitation. "Black girl, pretty eyes, always wore 2 gloves even when it wasn't needed. Hummed lullabies like she thought no one heard her." "That's her," Nathan said, eyes wide. "Do you know her name?" Geraldine tapped her chin. "Amara. I think she said it once real soft." He sat up straighter. "Amara," he repeated almost reverently. Geraldine nodded. "Had a little girl too. Carried her picture everywhere. Once slipped me a candy cane and told me her daughter thought I looked like Santa's grandma. I nearly cried." Nathan's throat tightened. The drawing, the humming, the touch, the soft scent of lavender. Pieces were falling into place like old puzzle corners snapping in. "Why did she stop coming?" he asked. Geraldine looked down. "They treated her wrong. Some rich boy made a joke out of her compassion. Then the hospital punished her for it." Nathan's jaw tightened. "That's unfair," Geraldine finished. "Cruel welcome to the world, baby." Back in his room, Nathan stared at the ceiling, heart thumping like a drum. He didn't know where to begin. He wasn't even sure what he'd say when if he found her. But he knew with certainty he owed her more than thanks. The next day he asked Linda again for help. She hesitated. "Nathan, the hospital has lawyers. They're protecting themselves. If you stir this up—" "I'm not trying to sue anyone," he said firmly. "I just want to find her." Linda sighed and took out her clipboard, pretending to scan forms. Tucked inside was the turkey drawing again. She handed it to him. This might help." Nathan studied it. The colors were faded, the crayon lines imperfect, but he recognized the handwriting, not from memory, but from feeling. He turned the page over. Faint scribbles like a practice signature. "Kalia," he read aloud. "That must be the daughter." Linda nodded. "That's her name." His eyes brightened. "Then she probably goes to school. There are maybe only a few schools nearby. I can—" Nathan Linda interrupted, gentle but firm. "You can't just show up at schools asking about a little girl." He blinked sheepish. "Right." Linda smiled. "But I can make a few calls, quiet ones." As Nathan thanked her, a nurse knocked softly and entered with a folder. "Mr. Whitaker, your company sent some holiday documents, things they said can't wait." He waved her off. "Tell them I'll read it later." "But sir," I said later. The nurse left flustered. Nathan turned back to the window. The city was gray and wet, December pressing its cold palms against the glass. But in his mind he saw a little girl holding a crayon. A woman humming a lullaby she thought no one heard. And suddenly, for the first time since waking, Nathan felt warm. He didn't want her to think he pitied her. He didn't want to repay her. He just wanted to understand how a stranger could care so much when everyone else had vanished. That night, as the hallway lights dimmed and the building grew quiet, Nathan lay awake and whispered into the darkness, "Wherever you are, Amara, I remember." Rain tapped steadily against the windows as Nathan slowly made his way down the hallway with the help of a walker. The world still tilted when he moved too quickly, but he didn't care. He was chasing a thread, a voice in the dark, a lullaby that had somehow stitched his soul back together. He passed the bulletin board near the staff lounge. Holiday flyers were tacked crookedly next to one another. Secret Santa, sign-up potluck volunteers needed, and a crayon-colored poster that made him stop. It was a turkey, big round body, 5 little handprint feathers. But what made his breath hitch was the familiar handwriting beneath it. "Get well, Mr. Sleepyhead." Nathan's hand trembled as he reached for the edge of the paper fingertips, brushing over waxy pink and orange strokes. Something deep in his memory pulled forward not a clear image, but a warmth. Laughter, maybe, or the feel of someone brushing hair from his forehead. It wasn't a hallucination. It wasn't a dream. Someone had loved him while the world forgot. He stood frozen, barely noticing as Linda approached from behind. "I didn't know it was still there," she said softly, watching his face. "Maintenance usually clears the board every week. Guess someone forgot." "No," he murmured. "Someone remembered." Linda didn't speak. She just let him stand there silent. Eventually, she held out a folded piece of paper. "You didn't get this from me." Nathan opened it carefully. Inside was a name and address scribbled in tiny block letters. The letters wobbled as if the writer had second-guessed every stroke. He looked up. "You found her?" "She does food delivery now," Linda said. "Works odd jobs since she's off hospital rotation. That's her cousin's place. They share the apartment." Nathan held the paper like it was breakable. His heart surged with something he couldn't name. Not gratitude, not obligation. It was closer to reverence. Later that evening, he sat in his hospital bed, staring at the turkey drawing on the tray table in front of him. The scent of antiseptic still clung to everything, but in his mind, it was replaced by lavender and lemon oil. The way her hands moved. The lullaby. The whisper. "Your hair's messy, sir." He hadn't known then that anyone could care like that, especially for a man who couldn't give anything in return. "I'm not resting until I find her," he said aloud, voice barely above a breath. Across town, Amara tugged her hoodie tighter as she stepped into the rain. The dinner trays she carried were wrapped in foil, still steaming. She'd promised Mrs. Jimenez next door that she'd drop off 2 plates of chicken and rice before 7. Kalia trailed beside her little backpack, bouncing, clutching a soggy school folder. "Mama, why do you always give food away?" "Because we've got enough to share, baby. But sometimes we don't got enough." Amara paused at the curb and crouched to her daughter's level. "When we're kind, even when it's hard, it keeps our hearts strong. And that matters more than full pockets." Kalia wrinkled her nose. "Even when people laugh at you," a tight smile curved Amara's lips. "Especially then." She stood and they crossed the street together. Behind them, neon lights from a corner laundromat flickered on. The rain picked up, but Amara didn't hurry. She was tired in her bones, but something about walking next to Kalia in the cold reminded her she was still here, still standing. Back at the hospital, Nathan was being fitted for outpatient rehab. "You'll need to continue therapy at home," Dr. Patel explained. "The medical board's clearing your discharge, but full mobility will take time." Nathan didn't answer immediately. He was staring at the window again. "Where's your mind, Mr. Whitaker?" "With someone who didn't ask for anything and gave me everything." Dr. Patel raised a brow but didn't press. That night, Nathan sat at the edge of his bed, a folder of corporate documents unopened at his feet. His phone buzzed with missed calls. PR teams, board members, investors. He ignored them all. Instead, he stared again at the address in Linda's handwriting. Then he reached for the turkey drawing, carefully folded it into his coat pocket, and whispered, "She has a daughter?" The words settled in the room like a promise. Long before he knew her name, Amara wrote him a letter she never mailed. Now that letter holds the truth he's looking for. Snowflakes tapped gently against the fogged windows of the Charlotte Public Library, blurring the gray afternoon into watercolor smudges. Inside, the scent of old books, microwaved ramen, and cheap hand sanitizer lingered under the buzz of flickering lights. Amara sat in the corner, her coat wrapped tight, legs crossed at the ankles. Her daughter Tiana sat beside her, hunched over a children's tablet, borrowed from the library desk headphones too big for her small ears. The library offered Wi-Fi and warmth, two things their apartment had been short on lately. An ice storm was forecast to hit by nightfall, and the power in their neighborhood had flickered twice already this week. The community center closed due to budget cuts, and the food pantry line had stretched around the block yesterday morning. Amara hadn't said it out loud, but she was counting the hours until payday, like she was rationing breath. Tiana looked up. "Mama, can we stay for story time today?" Amara smiled faintly. "We'll try, baby, if the roads don't get too icy." She tucked a stray braid behind her ear and returned her gaze to the small folder in her lap. Inside was a tattered envelope she hadn't opened in months, the one she'd meant to send, but never found the nerve to. It had no address, just Mr. Whitaker, VIP room 10B, scribbled in careful handwriting. The back of the envelope had a small heart sticker, the kind Tiana liked to put on her homework. The letter inside wasn't long, barely a page, but Amara had read it to herself enough times to remember each line. "Dear Mr. Whitaker, you don't know me, and that's okay. I just wanted to say thank you for whatever you gave to help this hospital stay open. You've helped more people than you'll ever realize. You helped me. That's all. Be at peace wherever you are." Amara Daniels. She never sent it, partly because she didn't think anyone would care, partly because it wasn't meant to be about being noticed. It was meant to be about saying thanks even if no one ever heard it. That was something she told Tiana again and again. Kindness isn't a billboard. It's a whisper in a loud world. Unbeknownst to her, across town in the upper floors of the hospital, that very envelope was now resting in Nathan Whitaker's hand. He had been awake for less than a week, still adjusting to the oddity of returning to life mid-sentence. Every hour brought a new awareness. Names taste pain in his joints, the feel of linen, the weight of guilt. But no memory returned more vividly than her. The woman's voice, the warm touch, the hum of a lullaby. He hadn't invented her. He was sure of it. His dreams had held her too gently for her not to be real. Earlier that morning, Miss Geraldine, the floor's longest-tenured file clerk, had stopped by with a trembling hand and a mysterious envelope. "I found this tucked behind a drawer with your old meds log," she said, as if confessing a sin. "Didn't recognize the name at first, but I think it was meant for you." Nathan had stared at the handwriting on the front for a long time, then opened it, then read it 3 times. She didn't ask for anything, he murmured to no one. The simplicity of the letter was what struck him the most. No plea, no story of hardship, no expectation. It was like someone had paused life just long enough to speak a soft truth and walk away again. Later, when Dr. Patel entered for the usual neuroassessments, Nathan asked with surprising clarity, "Do you know who Amara Daniels is?" The doctor blinked, caught off guard. "Not personally. Was she staff?" Nathan's voice was gravel, but steadier now. "She's not just staff. She's the reason I woke up." Patel didn't know how to respond to that. By early afternoon, Nathan had persuaded Geraldine to search through the staff logs from November. She might have worked the holiday shift, he guessed. Thanksgiving, quiet night. Geraldine returned with a thumb drive and a bemused look. "You're lucky. I back up everything to USB before deletion." Nathan slid the drive into a bedside tablet and tapped the only audio file. A soft static hiss filled the room. Then her voice. "I don't know if you can hear me, sir, but your skin's cold again. So lotion it is." There was a faint laugh in her voice, like someone smiling through exhaustion. Then the shuffle of movement, a lullaby hummed just under her breath, the same lullaby from his coma dreams. And later a whisper, "Tiana lost her tooth today. She says you better get well, or she's going to start calling you Mr. Lazybones." Nathan leaned forward, heart pounding. "She has a daughter." The file ended in silence, but his mind was racing. There was something about that voice, a mixture of strength and ache, like the world hadn't been kind to her. but she still found a way to sing. He clutched the letter once more. That one page unsigned, except for her name, held more truth than most of the boardroom speeches he'd heard in his life. No angle, no agenda, just kindness given freely. And now he needed to find her. Nathan couldn't sit still. The minute his IV was removed, he began pacing slowly with the assistance of a nurse, one hand always clutching the envelope like it was some sacred text. The letter said little, but the silence behind it spoke volumes. Amara hadn't written out of obligation, guilt, or hope for favor. She had written simply because her spirit couldn't do otherwise. Downstairs, Miss Geraldine, half-file clerk, half-informal historian, offered another puzzle piece. There was a mural, she said, as she walked alongside his wheelchair toward the old hospice wing, painted on the wall before they closed it down for asbestos removal. I remember her little girl helping, chalk-stained hands and a shy smile. They didn't ask permission, just did it late one Sunday. Nathan furrowed his brow, and no one painted over it. Geraldine smiled. Some of us know what to leave alone. The elevator hummed downward, stopping with a metallic shudder. The wing they entered was dimly lit dust motes floating in beams of soft winter light. It smelled like old bleach and silence. The hallway walls were still bare except for one curved stretch near room H113. Nathan wheeled himself closer. The mural was faded but alive. A giant tree, its roots wrapping around the bottom corner of the wall, reached skyward in twisting branches. Instead of fruit, it bore hearts, some bright red, others soft lavender. Nestled within the tree was a figure sleeping peacefully on a bed of clouds. A small girl, drawn in careful detail, stood at the base of the tree holding up a sign in crayon letters. "Get well, Mr. Sleepyhead." Nathan let out a shaky breath. It wasn't a masterpiece in technique, but the feeling in it, the love it stunned him. "Is that her daughter?" he asked softly. Geraldine nodded. "Tiana. Kids got more joy than half the staff combined. Came in one evening with a little portable speaker and asked to play music while her mom cleaned. Never caused trouble." He reached for his phone. "Do you know where they live?" She hesitated. "HIPAA would have me fired for giving out addresses. But..." She slipped something from her sleeve, a folded slip of paper. "I'm old and retiring next month, and maybe it just fell out of a patient file." Nathan opened it. An apartment number, a street name. Back in her small one-bedroom unit across town, Amara was just finishing washing the dishes with cold water. The power had flickered twice already that day, and the space heater hummed like it was on its last prayer. Tiana sat cross-legged on the couch with a coloring book in her lap, humming to herself. "Mommy, do angels wear white?" Amara paused at the sink. "Some do, baby." Tiana looked thoughtful. "Then I think you're one. But your white shirt always has ketchup stains." Amara chuckled. "Guess I'm a messy angel then." The door buzzed once. No knock, no voice. Cautiously, Amara approached and peeked through the peephole. No one stood there. Just a small wrap box carefully placed in the center of the doormat, dusted with snow. She stepped out slowly, heart racing. The package was wrapped in brown paper and tied with twine, like something from an old bookstore. No name, just a tiny sticker of a snowflake on the front. Back inside, she sat at the table and opened it. Inside was a framed photo of the mural, cleaned up the colors, digitally restored. In the corner of the image, standing just beyond the frame, was the unmistakable outline of Nathan Whitaker, smiling faintly. Her hand went to her mouth. Beneath the frame, a handwritten note read, "Some angels don't wear white. N.W." Tiana leaned over her shoulder and squinted at the picture. "Mommy, who's the man smiling in the corner?" Amara didn't answer right away. Her throat was tight, her chest full of something she hadn't allowed herself to feel in months, the sense that someone had seen her. Not judged, not dismissed, seen. She looked back down at the mural, now immortalized behind glass. Her fingers brushed the surface gently, then the envelope she'd tucked into her coat pocket, the same one she never mailed. He'd found it anyway. Across the city, Nathan stared out the window of his temporary rehab suite. The tree outside was bare, its limbs rattling against the wind. But he didn't feel cold anymore. He was starting to believe that some moments, some people don't need loud entrances. They slip in softly, like lullabies, like lavender, like truth. The photo stayed on Amara's table long after the snow had melted from her boots. She couldn't stop staring at it, her daughter's handwriting, preserved forever, her own heart laid bare through chalk and unsent words. For years, she had lived quietly, giving more than she had, asking for nothing, expecting even less. Now someone had noticed, Nathan Whitaker. Even saying his name aloud felt surreal. To most, he was a headline, a tycoon, a Coma case. To her, he had simply been Mr. Sleepyhead, a man she sang to when the world was too loud, and he was the only one who couldn't talk back. That night, Amara couldn't sleep. The heater sputtered again. Tiana had dozed off with a stuffed giraffe in her arms. But Amara lay awake thinking of how fragile the line was between silence and significance. One letter she never mailed had somehow made it across the distance between their worlds. The next morning brought with it gray skies and a cutting wind. Amara zipped her coat tight and carried Tiana down 3 flights of stairs when the elevator froze again. At the bottom, her neighbor, Mr. Collins, handed her a folded paper bag. "Guy in a black car left this for you?" he muttered, pointing his thumb toward the curb. Said it was personal. The car was already gone. Inside the bag was another note. "I'd like to talk when you're ready. You once said kindness wasn't a transaction. I believe you now. N.W." Amara stood there in the cold, blinking fast. Her fingers brushed her daughter's curls. "Mommy," Tiana said, tugging at her coat. "Are you going to cry?" She smiled softly. "Maybe." Meanwhile, across the city, Nathan sat in a conference room full of glass and tension. His executive team buzzed around him with year-end reports, budget forecasts, and branding slogans. He nodded through it, but his thoughts were elsewhere. He pulled out the USB stick Geraldine had given him, slipped it quietly into the side of his laptop. Amara's voice filled the room in a soft whisper. "Hi, you don't know me, and maybe you never will. But your room smelled lonely, so I brought lavender lotion. Hope that's okay. They say you can't hear us, but I don't believe that. So here's a poem by Langston Hughes, because my daughter says you should never sleep without a bedtime story. I hope someone's praying for you out there. I've got enough on my plate, but tonight I'll add you too." Nathan closed his eyes. Every word was a thread weaving warmth into the cold fabric of his former life. He didn't realize he was gripping the edge of the table until someone cleared their throat. Mr. Whitaker, the CFO, asked gently, "Shall we move forward with the layoffs?" Nathan opened his eyes, glanced at the spreadsheet full of numbers and names, and said the first real no of his career. Back in the library, Amara sat with Tiana at a sticky table covered in crayon marks. They were working on a new drawing. Tiana insisted it should be a castle with clouds and a giraffe wearing glasses. Amara's phone buzzed. Unknown caller. She hesitated. Her thumb hovered. She didn't answer. Instead, she took a deep breath and reached into her tote bag. There at the very bottom, wrapped in a napkin, and hope was the original letter, the one she never mailed. She unfolded it carefully. "Dear Mr. Whitaker, I just wanted to say thank you. Not because you know me, but because you built something that gave me a job. I clean floors. It's not fancy, but it feeds my daughter. I don't know what kind of man you are, but I hope you heal. The world is loud. Your room is quiet. I pray something good finds you in that silence." Amara Daniels. Her name. There it was, not hidden in initials, not erased in shame, just her truth. Mommy, Tiana said, peeking at the letter. "Did he ever see that?" Amara looked out the window, eyes drawn to the street. A black car had returned, parked under a street lamp, engine still. She clutched the letter tight. "I think," she whispered, "he's trying to." Tiana leaned in close, whispering, "Do you think he remembers us?" Amara's eyes welled, heart racing, as the library door opened, bells chiming faintly. Footsteps, slow, steady. She didn't need to look. She felt him there. A man once trapped in silence, now walking toward her, carrying nothing but a photo and a memory of a voice that held him in the dark. The small bell above the cafe door jingled with its usual soft charm, barely heard over the mellow hum of jazz and the hiss of the espresso machine. Amara looked up from behind the mismatched counter where a row of chipped mugs lined the shelves. She wore a navy apron, her curls pulled into a bun, and her sleeves rolled up just enough to reveal hands that had known more bleach than lotion. It was 3 days before Christmas, and the neighborhood cafe owned by a retired teacher who believed in second chances was quieter than usual. Outside, the streets were slick with icy rain. Inside, warmth lived in the smell of cinnamon rolls and sweet potato pie. Amara wiped a table near the window, her motions calm but practiced. The job wasn't glamorous, but it was honest. She liked that. Since her suspension from the hospital, she'd taken on whatever shifts she could, cafes, holiday cleanups, even helping with decorations at a nearby church. Anything to keep the lights on and the rent paid. A giggle came from behind the counter. "Tiana," she said gently, "if you keep hiding back there, Mrs. Garner's going to think we've got mice." Tiana's round eyes peeked out from under a stack of menus. "I'm not a mouse. I'm a cafe spy. Then your mission is to help me wipe the sugar jars." Tiana giggled again and popped up, curls bouncing. But before she could take her rag in hand, the door chimed again. This time Amara's body stilled. The man who stepped inside wasn't wearing a suit. No sleek tie, no shiny shoes, no echo of power. Just jeans, a soft gray sweater, and eyes that searched the room as if he was looking for a face he'd memorized in a dream. Nathan Whitaker. He stood for a moment, letting the scent of vanilla and memory guide him. Amara didn't move. She didn't speak. She felt the world shift in her chest. Her fingers gripped the edge of the table until the grooves pressed into her skin. Nathan didn't look like a billionaire. He looked like a man who had walked through winter with something precious in his pocket and only just remembered to open it. He saw her. No hesitation, no second guessing. He walked straight to her table. "I wasn't sure you'd be here," he said, voice low, "but I thought I'd try." Amara took a breath and finally straightened her back. "You found me." He smiled, that same small, grateful smile he had when he first opened his eyes and remembered warmth. On the table already sat a slice of pie pecan, her favorite. She hadn't noticed who placed it. Nathan gestured to it. "You once said cold skin made you sad. I figured warm pie might help." She blinked. He remembered that. Of course he did. She didn't sit. "Not yet." "What do you want?" she asked quietly. He looked down at the table, then back up at her with that strange mix of shyness and resolve. "Nothing." She raised an eyebrow. "I mean that," he said. "I'm not here with papers or cameras or anything that needs signing. I just needed to find the woman who stayed when I couldn't speak." Amara crossed her arms, defenses up like they always had to be. "You found her. Now what?" He exhaled through his nose, then pulled something from his coat pocket. A small, slightly crumpled note card. "I'm opening a new community space. A kitchen, comfort food, real stories, no PR fluff, just warmth. And if you're willing, I'd like to build it with you." She stared at him. He didn't flinch. "You think I need saving?" "No," he said. "I think I need reminding." "Of what?" He met her eyes, soft, unguarded. "That people are good. That kindness exists. That not everything has to be earned to be deserved." She lowered her arms slowly. The jazz changed tempo. A slow saxophone wandered across the speakers like it too was unsure where to go. Behind the counter, Tiana peeked again. Amara's heart beat fast, not from fear, but from the echo of something unfamiliar. "Hope." "I'm not your charity case," she said finally. He nodded. "Then be my partner. In life. Or at least, in pie." She didn't laugh. Not at first. But her lips curved just barely, and the warmth spread from her fingers to her chest. "I'm still mad," she whispered. "I know. And cautious. I deserve that." "Also," she said, glancing at the pie, "that's not how I like it sliced." Nathan grinned, a boyish glint in his eyes. "You'll have to teach me then." Amara turned away, gathering 2 mugs without saying more. Her hands trembled just a little, but this time it wasn't exhaustion. It was beginning, and it was hers to choose. Nathan watched Amara move behind the counter, steady but not rushed. She poured coffee into 2 mismatched mugs, one with a chip on the rim, the other with faded sunflowers. No cream, no sugar. He figured she remembered how he liked it. Or maybe she didn't care. He didn't mind either way. When she returned, she set the mugs down between them and finally slid into the seat opposite his. It creaked under her weight, old wood singing a tired song. The silence between them wasn't awkward. It was weighted like snow resting on branches, quiet but full of consequence. So, she started, eyes flicking to his face and then away. You just tracked me down. Not quite. I asked questions, talked to nurses. Miss Geraldine helped. Her expression softened slightly at the name. She found your letter. The one you never sent. Amara blinked. She hadn't thought of that letter in weeks. It had been folded between old utility bills, never meant to be seen. Just something she wrote one night after a hard shift, when the quiet in that VIP room felt like a second heartbeat. I didn't want anything from you, she said. I know, that's what shook me. He leaned forward, resting his forearms on the table. His voice dropped almost reverent. Everyone around me, they waited for me to wake up so they could ask for something. My mother wanted control of the company. My board wanted clarity about succession. My lawyers wanted signatures. And me, you hummed to a man who couldn't speak. You wiped my forehead and tucked in corners of a blanket that couldn't thank you. Amara didn't look away this time. It was just work. No, Nathan said. It was mercy. Real unfiltered mercy. And I don't think the world sees that enough. He reached into his coat again and pulled out a small wrapped box. It was nothing grand, just brown paper with twine. No logo, no gleaming brand. He placed it gently on the table between them. She didn't touch it. It's not money, he added, and it's not a favor. Amara slowly untied the twine. Inside the box was a frame, handmade rough at the edges, but lovingly done. Within it a photo of the mural she and Tiana had painted at the old hospice wing. Bright swirls of color, childish flowers, and in the corner, barely noticeable, until you looked closely, a stick-figure man lying in bed with a big smiling sun above him. Tiana's touch. Below the image, in elegant script, read, "Some angels don't wear white." Amara gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. You remembered the mural, she whispered. I was never fully gone, he said. Somehow I saw it. Her eyes glassed over, but she blinked the tears back. I thought no one even noticed we painted it, she said. We just wanted the place to feel warmer. It did. They sat in silence again, but this time it was softer. No weight, just breath. Then a tiny voice broke through. Mommy, is that the man from the photo? Tiana stood by the counter, one hand gripping the wood, the other holding her rag like a shield. Her eyes were wide with curiosity, her smile cautious. Amara looked at her daughter, then at Nathan. He smiled, slow and kind. Hi, Tiana. I've heard a lot about you. Tiana's curls bounced as she tilted her head. Did Mommy clean your room? He chuckled. She did. Better than anyone Mo ever has. Amara sighed, a soft sound from somewhere deep. She stood up and walked to her daughter, brushing crumbs from the little girl's sweater. Then she turned back to the table. We're not used to people finding us, she said. I didn't find you, Nathan replied. I followed the light. That should have sounded cheesy. Should have made her roll her eyes. But it didn't. It felt true. She whispered something to Tiana, who nodded eagerly. Then Amara returned to the table, set down 2 clean plates, and slowly sliced the pie into thirds. Tiana thinks you make a good customer, she said, almost shy. Nathan's eyes crinkled. Then I'd better be on my best behavior. As Amara passed him a plate, their fingers brushed. No sparks, no music, just warmth. Enough! The pie was warm, but Nathan took his time. He watched as Amara carefully blew on a bite for Tiana before feeding it to her, the same way a mother always did without thinking. The way a person loved even when no one was watching. She caught him staring and raised an eyebrow. You okay? He nodded, then smiled faintly. Just realizing I missed a lot of good things while sleeping through the world. Tiana giggled. Did you really sleep for a whole year? He turned to her. I did. And it was really boring. No cartoons, no pie, no bedtime stories. She gasped dramatically, then leaned into her mother. We should tell him the squirrel story. Amara froze mid-chew. Maybe not tonight. Nathan chuckled, savoring this strange, ordinary moment. A chipped plate, a jazz song playing low, and the comfort of voices that didn't demand anything from him. I have something else I wanted to say, he said, gently setting down his fork. Amara's smile dimmed slightly, as if bracing for a turn. But it's not a question, he continued. It's not a proposal. It's just, Something I need you to know." She folded her hands and listened. "You changed how I think about power," he said. "About success. I had everything: penthouse private jets, a staff that catered to me. But not one of them held my hand when my body forgot how to breathe." Amara looked down, unsure of what to do with the weight of his words. "You don't owe me anything, Amara," he said. "But if you ever decide you want to do more, run a place like this, build something that's yours, I want to be there. Not as your investor, as your backup, your extra pair of gloves." Amara slowly met his gaze. "Why me?" He tilted his head. "You stayed when everyone else stopped believing there was a person left in me." For a long moment, nothing moved between them but breath and blinking eyes. Then she asked quietly, "What if I'm not ready? What if I'm still scared?" "Then we stay scared together and make pancakes anyway." Tiana laughed again. "Mommy burns pancakes," Nathan winked. "That's okay. I'm good at ordering takeout." They laughed, all three of them this time. It wasn't loud, wasn't theatrical, just soft and full. Then Amara reached under the table, pulled out her notebook, the one with bent corners and sticky tabs, and slid it across to him. He opened it to find sketches of a place, a cafe with soft lighting bookshelves lining the wall tables where people played board games on Tuesdays. At the bottom of the page was a name written in Tiana's glittery crayon, "The Quiet Room." Nathan read it aloud and nodded. "Perfect. It was just a dream," she said. "Dreams are only fragile until someone believes them with you." Outside, the wind rattled the windows, but inside it was warm. Amara excused herself to help another customer. Tiana stayed at the table, happily doodling on a napkin with a purple pen. Nathan leaned over. "What are you drawing?" She pointed. "That's Mommy, that's me, and that's you, holding a pie." He laughed softly. "Do I look handsome?" She squinted at her sketch. Kinda." He grinned. "I'll take it." Amara returned apron dusted in flour. She always does that. Draws the people she likes into her world. Nathan looked at the napkin again and then at them. "Then I hope I get to stay in it." The cafe was nearly empty now. Jazz faded into silence as the last note lingered in the air. Amara walked to the counter, flipped the closed sign, and dimmed the lights. Nathan stood up to help clean, but she held up a hand. "You're a guest tonight. Sit." He obeyed, but only because she smiled when she said it. As she wiped the last table and turned off the espresso machine, he felt a strange peace settle in his chest. Not because everything was perfect, but because finally something felt real. She joined him once more, pulling off her apron and draping it over the chair. "So what now?" she asked. He thought for a second. "I come back tomorrow. Maybe we share another pie. Maybe you say no. Or maybe we build something." She didn't reply immediately, just traced the rim of her mug with her finger. Then softly, "Come back tomorrow. But don't bring a pie." "Oh," he teased. "What should I bring?" "Just yourself. And a clean shirt. Tiana judges outfits." Nathan laughed deep and real. They sat there a few minutes longer until even the coffee grew cold. Finally, Amara stood and took her daughter's hand. Before turning to leave, she looked back one last time. "Thank you for remembering me," she said. He answered without hesitation. "You're unforgettable." As the bell above the cafe door jingled and they stepped into the winter night, Nathan remained seated, heart full, a quiet smile stretching across his face. And when the door swung shut, he whispered to no one at all, "Guess I'm staying for dessert." Sometimes the loudest miracles begin in the quietest rooms, with a mother's whisper, a child's drawing, and a man learning to feel again. Nathan didn't wake up to wealth or applause, but to the echo of kindness, wrapped in soft lullabies and humble care. Because love, when given without conditions, plants roots in the most unexpected places, and one day it blooms exactly where it's needed. Just like a porch light left on for a stranger, even the smallest gesture of mercy can guide someone home. So maybe tonight, take a moment to notice the unseen hearts around you, the ones who stay, who give, who believe even when no one's watching. And if this story touched something quiet in you, consider passing that light on.